Can you hear it? The thunder above. It has roamed the sky since the beginning. It remembers. Mannahatta, the island of many hills. Today, nearly 2 million call it home. The Big Apple, the concrete jungle, Gotham, the island at the center of the world. It was not always so. Calling Thunder explores the unsung history of Manhattan through 360 video, spatial audio, and mobile VR. It is the culmination of a year spent investigating relationships between technology and our experiences in the natural world. I'm not talking about texting in the wild. I'm talking about new media technologies like the 360 camera I'm triggering in this photo. Now, this kind of work requires walking a fine line between designing experiences and creating content. But that line is blurring. As we transcend the two-dimensional interface and screens through virtual reality and 360 media, I believe that design will play an increasingly important role in both the creation and distribution of content. 1 year ago, I set out to Rocky Mountain National Park to work on NPR's first 360 feature, a dream job, a story about the geologic forces shaping our planet. But the designer in me was ready to iterate. And after we published, I was left with a question. How might immersive media enable more meaningful stories about natural history? The problem was that meaningful isn't really a meaningful word at all. And as I dug into my thesis work here at SVA, I realized the question I was trying to ask was, how can immersive media enable more memorable stories about natural history? Stories that teach us something. Inspiration struck when I rediscovered Dr. Sanderson's Mannahatta, which tells the story of a New York I've never known. A New York that Henry Hudson encountered in 1609. A New York with more ecological diversity per acre than Yellowstone. And even more exciting for me was the map that Eric and the Wildlife Conservation has put together, which enables users to explore what New York would have been like in 1609, block by block, species by species. Imagine what that world must have looked like. Imagine what that world must have sounded like. Imagine if we could transform that data into an immersive experience. So working with my advisor, Bill McQuay at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, we began to construct 360 soundscapes that would transport users back in time on a journey from Lower Manhattan to the northern tip of the island. They would compare how it sounds today to how it might have sounded in 1609. And throughout this process, we learned a couple of things I'd like to share with you today. When creating virtual environments, you should be afraid of the dark. You see, we set out with the intention to immerse users in total blackness during 1609 soundscapes. But once the screen went dark, people felt disoriented, or they simply assumed that the screen was broken. Instead, we developed a system of illustrations that would support the audio. As Bill put it, a coloring book for soundscape. Second, in virtual reality, our user interfaces should always be tied directly to narrative. In this case, the motion of looking up into the sky summons a loading ring and a thunderclap as the user can transition to the next part of the story. And finally, we should take this opportunity to A/B test content in addition to interaction. As we tested different modes of engaging users, we realized that certain facts and certain voices were more resonant with the people that were consuming the story than others. And so we worked with our wonderful narrator, Emily Crone, and rewrote the script to offer the most memorable experience we could. But how does one experience the story? Where do you find it? What device are you using to consume it? We wanted to design a distribution system that would adapt virtual reality content for the platforms people are already using. And these different forms of the story can be now accessed at unsung.nyc, where you can dig into the 360 feature. You can explore different soundscapes of the locations and different videos, dig into the different species that are featured, and even access the story as a binaural soundscape and a podcast. And this approach enabled us to create content that was easily embeddable by existing media platforms. The New York Times, for example, was able to share our content on their 360 platform, while NPR could play our soundscapes for listeners on the radio. We even decided to segment this into different 360 playlists on Vimeo, Audio, and Facebook 360, making it short snippets that anybody can access just a piece of the story if they had time. But reach isn't the same as impact. And the most rewarding feedback we've received has come from educators in New York, fourth grade teachers who teach the history of Manhattan as a part of their core curriculum. Because if we can create exciting and new ways to inspire students and teachers about natural history, then I think we're starting to do our job. Moving forward, we are excited to continue working with the Wildlife Conservation Society as they incorporate new models of what Manhattan might have looked like. And we are also excited to work with the Lenape Center in bringing some of the voices of 1609 into the story through the voices of their ancestors. But the truth is, memorable stories are only meaningful if they change one's perspective on the future. Mannahatta is gone, but Manhattan still lives. The High Line has welcomed the return of native plants and insects, while Central Park is an oasis for migratory birds. And we must cherish these green and gray places where life thrives. Thanks to everybody that contributed to the story, and thanks to all of you for attending the Wonderful Behaviors Interaction Design Thesis Festival of 2017.